theme today is the expertise of people who are living with dementia. And we've got a lovely panel of 4 here. So I'll just ask you each to introduce yourselves very briefly. I'll start with Jerry.
Good morning, everybody. My name is Gerald King, but everybody calls me Jerry. I am 59 years old, living with young onset dementia, and I live in Fife in Scotland.
Thanks, Jerry. And Alison.
Hi, I'm Alison. I live in Dundonald, which is in Northern Ireland, and was diagnosed with Alzheimer's in April 2017.
Thanks, Alison. And Wendy.
My name's Wendy Mitchell, and I was diagnosed 8 years ago, and I'm in sunny East Yorkshire.
Thanks, Wendy. And Chris.
Hello, I'm Chris. I live down in Ashford in Kent. I was diagnosed 10 years ago with frontal temporal dementia. And I think other than Wendy, I'm one of the only ones that hasn't got snow at the moment. So that, the sun shines on the righteous, Wendy.
And Chris is going to get a prize at the end of the week because up till now, he's attended every single session of this festival, which is absolutely amazing.
Must get a life, mustn't I?
He's still alive. So we're going to kick off with a very short film, less than 2 minutes, which is talking about people with dementia as the experts.
Too often the voices of people with dementia are forgotten about, not listened to. Experts think that they know what's best for the people living with dementia, so they don't ask them. They usually come up with a solution first and then ask the people afterwards if this works, which it usually doesn't.
First, I thought, well, what is an expert? And I put it down to somebody that knows about a subject inside out. We are somebody that knows about dementia from the inside out.
There's nothing that can replace actually talking to a person. And the expert really just means that you know yourself. It's talking about you and your experiences. And we are all experts about our own selves.
So the more people that they speak to, the wider picture that they get.
Involving as many people as possible also gives that person a voice. You'll get all those different experiences, you see, and all that will do will give you the bigger picture of what's actually going on, and I think it's far better.
Sorry.
Oh.
Thanks, Rachel. And that film ends with the question, why wouldn't you ask us what we know and benefit from that? And that's what we're focusing on today. And it was lovely to have, yes, as Kate says, lovely cornet playing.
Yeah, I thought it was Chris.
So we're going to hear today about 4 ways in which the people on the panel have shared their lived experience, their expertise, their tips, their strategies for living with the wider world. And we're going to start with you, Wendy, if that's okay. And I'm going to ask you to tell us a little bit about the books, especially maybe the second one and the one that's about to come out soon, and how you use your tips to help others.
Well, when my first book came out, which is still amazing to say, somebody I used to know, it was all about me. And I realized then that for the second book, I needed to share others' experience because, you know, that was just my story, the first book. But in the second, I wanted to bring together so many playmates who may not have had the chance to have their voice heard in print, to share their experiences, share their ideas with me through my second book. And what I wish people knew about dementia is just that. It's a catalogue, if you like, of everybody on my playmate stories and experiences and tips they found themselves just to be able to live with dementia. And that's the important word, to live, not to give up on yourself.
Thank you, Wendy. So you talk about, you use the word playmates. Not everybody will have heard that phrase before. Can you just tell us what you mean by that?
Yeah. I call other people living with dementia my playmates, because there is such a unique bond that I have when I meet someone else living with dementia. You know, I may not have met them at any other time in my life because we come from very different backgrounds, very different places in society. But that unique connection of living with dementia just instantly makes me want to call them my playmate. And I have done ever since the first time I met people.
And do you find that you learn a lot from the tips that others share with you? For example, when you were interviewing them for your book?
Goodness, yes. Where no one person can have all the answers. We all have our own unique experience. And so we have our unique strategies and ideas that we can share with others. And some may not work for people, but some might. You know, they might be experiencing the same thing in the same way as we are. So to have that huge database, if you like, of tips and ideas and strategies, we know what better for people living with dementia, but also those caring for those living with dementia, to learn about our experiences and our strategies.
Thanks, Wendy. And I know that you've offered very kindly to read a little section of your book. Are you ready to do that now?
I am, yes.
Lovely, thank you.
And I've just realised I've marked it with my Welsh I want to speak card. I always like to turn negatives into positives, because that's how I cope with dementia. So this short passage just shows you what I call the gifts from dementia, which may sound odd to many people, but I know perfectly well that dementia would hate to think of giving us anything nice. And so I call these moments the gifts from dementia. Dementia can be cruel in so many ways, yet every so often it hands us a gift in a most unexpected form. It was a bright day in the garden and the sun was starting its descent, streaking long shadows of the fence across the lawn. I was pottering inside, shuffling from one room to another with a cup of tea in hand, trying to decide where to sit. Suddenly, through the glass of the double doors, something caught my eye. It took a while for the silhouette to make a recognizable figure, but it was then that I saw the unmistakable shape of him, a man standing in the middle of my lawn. My father. By then he must have been dead 20 years or more. Should I have been frightened to see him in all his incredible yet ordinary detail? He was wearing his familiar baggy green cardigan, his happy casual clothes that he wore in his garden. A tip of mine for visual hallucinations is either to take a photograph of what you think you might see. And if it's on the photograph, it's real. If it's not, it's probably dementia playing tricks with your mind. Or to go away for 30 minutes and come back. And if it's still there in 30 minutes' time, you know it's probably real. And if not, it's probably dementia playing tricks with you. But in that moment, I didn't want to let that moment disappear. I didn't want to know if it was real or unreal. I don't know how long we stood looking at each other. It could have been minutes or hours. Dementia has a funny relationship with time. The logical part of my brain knew that what I was seeing wasn't real. I knew it was dementia playing tricks with my brain. And normally I would have used my tips of photographing or 30-minute walking away. But this time I simply stopped and stared, determined to enjoy this gift that dementia had granted me, because they are few and far between. I felt not fear, but an emotional pull to stay and spend some time in the company of my dear old dad again. And in the blink of an eye, he was gone.
Oh, Wendy, thank you so much for that. That was more than a tip, wasn't it? That was very powerful.
Yep.
Lovely. And I'm sure would be so helpful to others who also find that dementia sometimes plays tricks on their brain or what they see or what they hear. Thank you for that. We'll come back to you later, but we're now going to move on to Knowledge is Power.
Okay.
So Knowledge is Power, I think the original booklet was created by Deep in Wales.
Yep. And
then the Scottish version was adapted by several Deep groups, the Beacon Club, Dementia Voices East Dunbartonshire, the Scottish Dementia Alumni, and your group, Jerry, Stand in Fife. Yep. Can you tell me a little bit about that and what it meant for you, what the process was?
Yeah, I think it was we were actually inspired by the Welsh version. Because what we found in Scotland was that to get information at all with regard to dementia, there was nothing really. You had to search far and wide, scrabble for all the information you can get. And when we heard that Wales was doing a Knowledge is Power booklet, we thought, what an amazing idea. We would take that up ourselves, like. So we approached the Life Changers Trust and asked them if we could apply for some funding to resource this book, which was granted to us. And through that, we pooled all the knowledge together, and the book contains pretty much everything from benefits and allowances, information to travel, mobility, public transport, technology, legal considerations, useful phone numbers, and things like that. It's been quite an amazing journey, finding all this information in the first place, and then putting it all together. It wasn't easy to find.
No.
But it's basically a one-stop shop. So somebody who is newly diagnosed with dementia can take this book away, and it should apply to their area, what's available locally for them, rather than try and have no information whatsoever.
I'm just having a look at it now, and what I love about this booklet is that not only does it contain lots of really useful and well-researched information, but it's also full of lovely quotes from real people with dementia. And they're not only the practical things, but things like keep smiling, live for the day, and don't give up.
Absolutely, yes, definitely. Yep. And that's what it's all about. It's dementia is hard enough as it is. And I think any way that we can make it the journey a lot easier can only be a good thing, Philly. And I think the fact that it was people living with dementia were involved in collating information and helping to process it, this idea into the book, was amazing. As I said early on, people with dementia are too often looked over. And given the opportunity to do something, to do something meaningful, is amazing. It's brilliant, and should be something that's provided as much as possible, really.
There's people could say, well, there are a lot of dementia organisations out there who've got websites or booklets full of this kind of information. So what do you think is different about a booklet that is made by and with people with dementia themselves?
I think it's the difference is, well, you've actually said it, Philly, it's made by people living with dementia themselves. They're the ones who are going through the journey of the dementia process. They're the ones who experience all the ups and downs that the dementia brings in your life. And that people with dementia know best, irrespective of what anybody else thinks. I think if you want to know what dementia is like, you have to ask somebody with dementia. It's as simple as that. And giving people with dementia a reason to get up in the morning is what it's all about as well. Too often than not, the vision of people with dementia is sitting in an armchair doing nothing and listening to Vera Lynn. And as you can see by the people in this group and all over Deep, that's not the case at all. And it's a stigma that has to be broken. And I think involving people in making booklets like this, and again being involved in other projects, will break that stigma.
Thanks very much, Jerry. That's great.
Pleasure.
And I believe there are versions in English, Welsh, Scots, and Gaelic now.
Correct. Yes. There was
Amazing.
Yeah,
and I'm sure there'll be more to follow.
Yeah, we thought that if we were doing one in Scotland, we had to do it in Gaelic as well, just to keep the tribes happy.
That's true. Okay, we'll come back to you again as well, but we're now going to move on to talking about the Living with Dementia toolkit, in which both Chris and Alison were involved. And we have got a little animation.
Everybody who's affected by dementia is different.
And everyone is affected by dementia differently.
That's why everyone has a unique definition of what it looks like to live your life with dementia.
We created the Living with Dementia toolkit to help people affected by dementia. You can choose which parts interest you and explore the toolkit at your own pace.
It's designed to give you hope for the future, inspire you with real life experiences, and offer ideas to help you live your life as you choose.
The toolkit is full of evidence-based resources created by researchers in co-production with people who've been directly affected by dementia, meaning they understand what you are going through.
The Living with Dementia toolkit is divided into 5 sections. Each section reflects an aspect of life that our research and people affected by dementia have told us matters.
Stay safe and well. Stay connected. Keep a sense of purpose. Stay active. Stay positive.
Each section is introduced by both someone with experience of dementia and a researcher, and contains a range of resources for you to read, watch, or fill out.
There are tips on maintaining your everyday independence, advice on fun ways to stay active, positive stories to keep you uplifted, and much more.
Throughout the site, you'll find a combination of resources we've created alongside links to external sites and resources to help and inspire you.
You can explore the resources in any order, depending on what you feel is the most relevant for you. You can also print out resources to read at home.
It is possible to live your life with dementia with hope, and we want to show you how. Explore our resources today to find out more.
Isn't that a lovely animation? I really love that.
Yeah.
Thanks for Chris for suggesting that we include.
I think what's good about it is all the voices you heard were the people that were involved in putting that website together. And what is brilliant about it is you get given all sorts of documentation. It's all in black and white, or might be in color, but that's a living thing, and it's growing all the time. More bits are being added to it all the time. But what is great is you actually see people like Alison and Keith and myself and a few others telling you or explaining to you what they've found and what they've done that's helped them. And what I like about the beginning of it, when you click on it, there's a question there, is how do you feel today? And by clicking on that, you can go in all sorts of directions. And it really is a sit down with a cup of tea thing to go on to. Because the more you click, the more you think, oh, no, that looks interesting. And you just really dig into it. And it's alive, it lives. And that's what I really like about it. Alison.
Yeah, as I say, I think the whole idea behind it is just special. You know, I think most of us, you know, feel when given the dementia diagnosis, even though I think, again, most of us, 99% of us knew what was coming, but when the consultant said the word, you know, you went into a really dark place and you felt you had nothing to live for. You know, whereas this sort of information, if this resource was to be freely handed out and people made aware of it, you know, you're leaving the room with some degree of hope, you know, and even if you're not ready to look at it at that particular moment in time, you know, it's something that you can go back to, it's something that you can go into. And the fact that it's set out in sections, you know, you don't have to go from the beginning to the end, you know, you can dip in and out of it. But as Chris said, you know, the fact that it says, you know, how are you feeling today? You know, I think most of us get up in the morning, or even at any point of the day, it changes as the day goes on. You know, how are you feeling right now? You know, that you can sort of go and look at it and explore it. And the fact that it is, you know, developed with people who have a dementia diagnosis and also carers, you know, so it benefits both sides of the, you know, both can get the encouragement, the support that they need at that particular time. It's just such a fantastic resource. And if anybody hasn't looked at it yet, I would encourage them to go and have a nosy at it. And I think they will be very genuinely impressed.
But there is a hard booklet that you can get. But really, by going on the website, that's where you really, it sparkles, because you know, the booklet can't really do justice to what's really there. And there is a section in there called My Life, My Goals, which is based around cognitive rehabilitation, and that gives you tips and ideas and a plan. If you're having a challenge with, I don't know, remembering what day of the week it is, it helps you lay down a plan with a carer or a friend or your cat, your dog, whoever wants to be with you, and you can work your way forward through it. And so I think it's probably the best, well, I'm going to say this because I'm biased, but the best thing since sliced bread that has ever come along to help people to interact. And it's like coming along to one of these sessions. It really is, because you're getting it from the horse's mouth.
Well, I can see from what's happening on the chat is very busy, and people are very excited about this resource and didn't necessarily know about it. So it's great to spread knowledge of it here. Can I just ask you, both of you, or each of you, how do you feel when you look at it and know that you were absolutely instrumental in producing this?
Really very proud of it, you know, and you know, I have sort of spoke to the Dementia NI group, you know, that I would sort of go along to, and I'd got a box of them sort of posted over and were able to hand them out, you know. So really, really proud that I actually was part of the development, and, you know, that you were there from the beginning until the final print.
Yeah, you're dead right, Alison. It makes you feel very, very proud, and you look at it. And I must say that it was Exeter University that helped pull all this together. It was one of their projects. But and I was so impressed with the way that they worked with people living with dementia and their carers. They just listened the whole way through. And when it came down to the choosing the icons that are on, you know, the various 6 sections. Some of the icons we didn't like. One of the picture, it said stay active, but the guy was in the swimming pool. It looked like he was having a heart attack, and we didn't like that icon at all, because we thought, well, that's not really staying active, and it doesn't promote it. So they listened, and that's how it developed, and that's why I think it's so wonderful. But there we are. Cool.
Sounds like a real partnership,
a
really genuine partnership. Thank you.
Yeah,
thank you both. So in a minute, we're going to come on to our 4th example of sharing expertise, which is the Dementia Tip Share website. There you are. You can see a picture of the Dementia Tip Share website, which is something that we produced during COVID, during the lockdown, something we were able to do. And it actually was the original idea of Wendy and George Rook. So I wonder if you'd like to tell us a little bit about this, Wendy.
Oh gosh, I didn't know it was mine and George's idea.
Yes, it was.
Oh, I don't remember anyway. Yeah. Well, what a brilliant idea we had. You know, what a good use of lockdown that was to actually keep us involved and keep us active by asking people with dementia for their tips. Because at that time, you know, during lockdown, we all had strange challenges that we had to overcome. And it gave us that purpose that I think somebody said earlier, or it was on a slide, we need a sense of purpose, because when we're diagnosed, you know, we lose our confidence, we lose our sense of value. And TipShare actually can make people feel valued again, because we want them to share their tips and their strategies. What other people say, what another person with dementia says is just as important as what I say or what anybody says. All our voices are so important, all our strategies and the tips that we have. And we often don't realize that they are tips and strategies. We can sometimes just adapt our lives without realizing that we've done something brilliant, that we've done something that we could share with others that might help them in the difficult circumstances. So TipShare to have all these tips in one place and to be able to navigate by typing in a word that you're struggling with. Maybe it's outside the home or inside the home. Just type that in and everybody's tips will appear. So it's almost an interactive website that, yes, it's for finding other people's tips, but also for sharing your own. You never know if that one tip that you could give someone could actually change their life. And that's not saying that lightly, because these strategies do change your life when you're living with dementia. Did I answer your question then?
You did. I can't remember what it was, but I'm sure you did.
I can't either.
You've been talking very eloquently about the TipShare website.
Yeah.
While you've been talking, I've just been having a look at it, and Rachel's put the link in the chat. There's a lovely quote on the front page from you, Wendy, that says, I treat dementia as a game.
Yeah.
It throws me a challenge and I solve it to try and keep one step ahead. But that's what dementia is all about, a life of adapting.
It is. That is, if people could only look at a diagnosis, not at the end of one life, but as the start of a new life, of adapting, because that's what we're doing every single day that we're living with dementia. We are playing this game that no one would ever choose to play. But if you play it with the idea of being that one step ahead, then it can just help make life less stressful and less and more, almost more enjoyable, because you can see when you're winning.
I think what's unique about this resource is that all the tips only come from people living with dementia, not from carers or families or from professionals at all. And that's not to undermine in any way those strategies that those other groups have developed, but we really wanted to shine a spotlight onto the expertise that people with their own lived experience have.
That's right. And it can help care partners, it can help professionals by simply reading our tips to understand that there is more to dementia than memory. You know, by seeing reading the type of tips we produce, you can actually see so much more into living with dementia.
Thank you, Wendy. I've just spotted a question here from Steve Kennedy. He says, is TipShare to be available in a printed version? When I may need help, my last thought is to go to my laptop, whereas I would be more likely to pick up and read a book or leaflet as I settle ahead for a few minutes. I think that's a really good question, isn't it? And it's probably something we've all struggled with, whether things should be in hard copy or online. Steve, at the moment, there isn't a leaflet. And of course, there's a couple of barriers to that. One is the money for producing it. The second one is getting it out to all the people who might benefit from it. And then the third one is keeping it up to date, which is much easier to do online. But Chris, what's your...
I was going to say, the advantage of being online is it is organic, isn't it? And it continues to build, and that the tips share site is continually building, and so there's new tips coming in all the time. And so you might not have related to one person on it, but you can relate to another person or the tip that they're giving. But I do take your point that for some people it's the last place they will go. Other people, the first place now where society goes, oh, do I know that? No, I don't. What does Google say? And so that And this, rather than go to Google and get Dr. Google's information, which is completely wrong a lot of the time, by going to this, you're getting it, the truth, the honesty, the reality of what people have done and how it's helped them. And so it can continue to grow, can't it? Whereas put it in a hard booklet and it could go stale after a short while.
Mm. Yeah, but absolutely take your point, Steve, and we will have a think about that. I think the other thing that occurs to me is that even if the person living with dementia is unable to use IT, for example, you know, many of their families, or maybe if they have a professional who's in touch with them, they could be using this and they could be saying, let's sit down together and have a look at some of the strategies that other people in the same boat use. Rachel.
It's not an answer to this question actually, but I've had a private question, which maybe there's two questions to ask of the panel. One is somebody's interested to know the percentage of people who are single and how they cope. And I think this is probably related to the idea of finding information, using information, how you do that in the absence of maybe people around you who can support you. And the second question is about why it's a statement, I think, why don't doctors, surgeries or memory clinics promote these sites, or do they?
Wendy.
Well, the single person bit, and I can't remember where I read it, so I can't quote anything, but they were saying a third of people living with dementia live alone. So it's not a negligible number, it's a huge number that, you know, they need different help. I'm going off piece now, but with Dementia Enquirers, our research at York Minds and Voices was on the living alone versus living as a couple. And the one thing it showed is how, you know, obviously both are equally important, but how if GPs and memory clinics know that fact, that they can offer different support for each, because there is different support needed. And of course, TipShare could, and all the others could help enormously. So yes, why don't doctors and memory clinics use our resources? It's because it's like with our Good Life with Dementia course, the experts, in inverted commas, the memory clinics said that, well, you know, it's run by people with dementia. It's not got any credence to it, not got any value to it. So very annoying.
Very annoying. Alison, are you annoyed?
Extremely. Yeah. And I think the most frustrating thing is that if you get any other diagnosis, you know, if you get a cancer diagnosis, or, you know, even my husband, who was diagnosed with diabetes quite late in life, support groups are instantly flagged up by the consultant, you know, and they get a chance to speak to other people who have that diagnosis. You know, with dementia, you're told you have dementia, you're told to go and put your affairs in order, and that's basically it. You know, so if more stuff could be promoted, you know, from people who have the like of Wendy's books, you know, the information, you know, the projects that we have all been involved in and produced some fantastic resources, you know, the people would leave that room in a completely different frame of mind. Yes, they would still have got the dementia diagnosis, but they would leave with a bit of hope, you know. And it is just so frustrating, the fact that now there is so many good resources out there that still are not being promoted and still not being handed out. And the like of that TipShare, you know, that is such a fantastic resource, you know, just to, you know, for people to be made aware of, that they can go on and say, okay, I'm really struggling with this, or I need help with this. And to get advice from others with a dementia diagnosis would be a completely different ballgame than a professional telling you, well, actually, you know, you can no longer do this, and this, rather than getting on there and saying, okay, I maybe need to do it in a slightly different way, but I still can do it.
Thanks, Alison. Jerry, you've got your hand up.
Thanks, Philly. Yeah. In Fife, we do a lot of dementia awareness presentations, and we found that the GP surgeries are the worst. We just can't get into them at all. Like, they're not interested, which is really annoying. Because, I mean, as Alison says, when the resources are out there, all the GP needs to do is say, okay, yeah, unfortunately, you've been diagnosed with dementia, but here is your local resources. If you go there, you'll get all the information you'll need, and you'll get all the support that hopefully that you'll need as well. GPs, we found, and NHS are probably two of the worst. And I don't know what it is, whether it's just the case that they just think that we don't know what dementia is when we do, or they think they know better, which they don't at the end of the day. Yeah, it's a difficult one.
Thank you. Wendy.
Yeah, and also the GPs, memory clinics, consultants, they all give negative diagnoses. And yet any of these resources could turn around their role and give hope to people. Surely that would make them feel better in their job. It's not rocket science, as we're always saying.
That is a common phrase amongst us all. It's not rocket science. And Alison's agreeing too, with a big thumbs up. Now, I've got a rather large question that I've spotted in the chat from Nikki. We haven't got much time left, so we might need to think of just one point each to answer. So Nikki says, I have a somewhat big blue sky thinking question. What would a perfect dementia-friendly world look like? And what do those of us who are not living with dementia need to do to help to create that world?
Oh,
So
goodness.
Can we each think of one thing that people...
How long have we got?
Can I go to Alison first and then you, Wendy? Is that all right?
Yeah.
Yeah, my one thing would be, don't presume you know what I want or need, ask me.
Say that again, please.
Don't presume you know what I need, ask me.
Thank you. That's pretty loud and clear. Wendy.
Don't assume we can't. Assume we can, unless we prove you otherwise.
Thanks, Wendy. Chris, you've just said it in the chat, but...
Yeah, I did say it in the chat, but we should always give people hope. And the fact is, people living with dementia can, and they do, go forward and do wonderful things.
Thank you. And Jerry?
Yeah, a point of diagnosis for the people should be directed to peer support. Simple as that. Peer support works, it's proven, and they'll get all the support they need from that. Like, simple as that. Like, I'll take a weight off the GP shoulders. Like,
thank you. And that has come through so strongly, hasn't it, in this week in this festival? The power of peer support, the power of friendship and belonging and trusting, being with others in the same boat. And when you've got that foundation for yourself, you find that you can then go out into the world and teach people about dementia and share your experiences and your expertise. That has really come through strongly. Any other questions, or does anyone on the panel want to make any other points about the sharing of the lived experience and of the expertise that you've all built up? Wendy.
It's almost a given now in research to work with the people who are going to benefit from the research. So wouldn't it be lovely if health professionals also had this ethos, or what's the word, had this
Philosophy,
thank you, philosophy towards their work, because it would make their work more rewarding. It would make their understanding so much fuller, because they're all taught about the clinical workings of the brain and all the other stuff that goes in there, but they're not taught about the lived experience. So how wonderful it would be if that could be the norm.
absolutely, Wendy. And yeah, Chris, come in.
Yeah, I think what is wonderful is to see people, and I refer back to the previous session we had this morning about positives around having dementia, and seeing people happy, smiling and achieving, living with dementia going forward. That is such an inspiration to show to somebody who feels really, well, that's the end of the life, you know, there's nowhere to go. And then you meet these people and you think, good grief, well, if they can do it, I can jolly well do it, because, you know, and that's not an insult, that's a compliment. And just to see people smile, because you tend to see the pictures of people living with dementia always depressed as old people, and you know, they look very frail and everything. And none of us are very frail, and even if we are a little bit frail, we just get on with it. And so that's the positivity of being able to get it out there to people. And sometimes you get criticized for being so positive. You know, how dare you be positive? Well, I dare and I do, and that's all I can say.
I dare and I do. I love that. And we've got a question from James Brown. I'm not sure where you're from, James, so maybe you'd like to put that in the chat. And James is asking, what advice would you give to companies looking to involve people living with dementia in their research? And what's the best way of connecting with this community? Wendy?
Through the deep network. So simple. There are so many of us out there. You've only seen 4 of us today. There are so many people out there who could be involved in various ways with companies. You've just got to ask us. We're not hard to find. You just have to put the effort in to find the people you're looking for.
Thanks, Wendy. And Jerry?
Yeah, Philly, when you hit the nail on the head, the deep network. I mean, they're constantly advertising on their website for people who looking for researchers looking for people with dementia to get involved in their research, and that's the place to do it. I mean, that covers the whole of the UK, and that gives the people with dementia an opportunity to get involved if they want to get involved. It's as simple as that. Like.
Thank you. James has just put, he runs a startup in Cambridge, which is really interesting. And Rachel has sent him some links to how to invite deep groups to take part. I mean, that just reminds me of a project, just one example of a project that I'm involved in at the moment, and Alison is, which is with NatWest Bank. We're sworn to secrecy about the actual things we discuss. Had to sign all sorts of documents and things. But it's a great example of people, actually, not just people with dementia, but people with a range of disabilities or circumstances. And they bring us all together and they ask us about products that they've got. They call them products, but they're kind of bank things and letters and systems. And we can all comment from the point of view of our particular circumstances. Wendy?
Yeah, I've just seen a flash of what I should have also said as well.
Okay, go for
the
it.
Young Dementia Network.
Yeah.
Is also a source for finding people. There's so much so many resources out there, but for me the main ones are the Young Dementia Research Network and the deep network.
Thank you. And Kate's just put up the link to the Young Dementia Network. So thank you for raising that, Wendy. Okay, there's one more question from Di McCarthy, and then I think we're going to wind up. Again, it's a huge one, so maybe just one thing. Where would the panel like research to go now?
Goodness me.
Well, you don't have to give the full answer. Wendy?
I would love to see the pharmacy companies. As I know that they haven't forgotten us, but it's been 20 years since they've actually found anything. If they could support the social and technological research world with funding from their big pot, it would help those of us diagnosed now to live for today.
Thanks, Wendy. Chris, you had your card up, and then Jerry.
Yes, I did. What I would like research to go forward is not keep researching the same flipping thing time and time again. You get invited, and it's the same thing, or particularly during COVID. I mean, there were so many. In the end, I was just going, well, I'm not getting involved in that because it's already been researched. Move on, research something new. You know, don't reinvent the wheel because you don't need to.
Thanks, Chris. Jerry, and then Alison.
Yeah, I was just going to say, same as Wendy, they should be researching into how to live well with dementia. That's to help us to live well with a diagnosis. That's the way to go.
We could just put in a little plug there, and maybe Rachel can put up the link to all the Dementia Inquirers projects, which are 25 reports from people living with dementia. And I think those really give a really good idea of the kind of things that people with dementia, the kind of topics they would choose. Alison.
Yeah, it's a very good question, but a hard one to sort of answer. But I agree with Chris. I think, you know, for new stuff to be researched, you know, rather than, you know, because sometimes it can be a bit sort of repetitive as to what is being done. And also would agree with Wendy, you know, if pharmaceutical companies could get on board and like where it would not probably benefit any of us, it would hopefully benefit people who would be getting diagnosed, you know, now or in the future.
Thanks, Alison. Well, I'm going to wind us up now and say a big thank you to our panel, Jerry, Wendy, Chris, and Alison. You have been absolutely brilliant. And I think looking at the chat, you've given people loads and loads of food for thought. I've also got a challenge for everyone who's been joining us to share all the resources we've sent you with at least 10 people each, and then they will reach 300 new people.